Hello, this is your mini lecture for Chapter 5, Motivation at Work. Here are the learning outcomes for this chapter. You can pause here to read them if you like. First, we're going to define motivation and look at different views on how individuals are motivated at work. So motivation is just the process of arousing and sustaining goal-directed behavior. All right, so basically it's really how do we entice people to take the actions we would like them to take, and in this particular situation within the workplace. So there's some different theories. There's an internal theory, which basically says that um, it's within ourselves which leads to our motivation. Some people call this intrinsic motivation. Process theories basically emphasize the nature of the interaction between the individual and the environment. And so it's kind of saying the environment around us, what leads to our motivation. And then external environment is elements in the environment, including things such as consequences, which are the basis for understanding and explaining behavior. So we all have our own internal needs, all right? And so this has been philosophers and scholars have theorized this for centuries about what human needs are and what motivates humans. So Freud's method for delving into the unconscious mind to better understand a person's motives and needs was called psychoanalysis. And so it really served as a basis for kind of the following need theories of motivation. So the unconscious mind, he says, is that we have this conscious mind, which is the small amount of activity that we know about. And the subconscious things is things that we could be aware of if we really wanted to. And I think we've heard of that. And then the unconscious are things that we're aware of and cannot, that we are unaware of and we won't become aware of. Things that include here are fears, motives, irrational wishes, immoral urges, selfish needs, experiences, the things that we sort of just put away or we don't really aren't able to deal with. And so you use this little bit of an iceberg is like we only are conscious about so few things, and there's really just so much more depth to a person, as you can see with the iceberg metaphor. So some external incentives. So most of the time when we think of incentives or motivation in the workplace, we think about money, right? Um, And so early organizational scholars assumed that people were motivated by their own self-interest in economic gain or money. However, and I think we all know this and have seen this, especially in a post-COVID world, we've seen that money is not the only motivator and that both internal and external motives can lead to motivation within the workplace. Um, One of the ways that we look at human needs is through Maslow's hierarchy. Um, Maslow's hierarchy of needs basically says that we have these various levels of needs. And the bottom of the pyramid is our most basic needs, followed by safety and security, love and social needs, esteem needs, and self actualization. We'll look at them in more depth in a minute. And physiological and safety and security needs are theory X, and then the top three are theory Y. I'm going to come back to that. No, I'm not. Okay, so our physiological needs are really those needs such as the need for air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, are literally our most basic needs. Our safety needs are next, and so that's our security, employment, resources, health, property. The next level is love and belonging. That's friendship, intimacy, family, a sense of connection. Then it's our esteem, so our respect, our self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. And then last is self-actualization, which is really this desire to become the most and the best that we can be. And basically in Maslow's hierarchy, it says that until all our lower level needs are fulfilled, we will not fulfill the next level. So if I don't have food and water, I'm not even going to worry about my safety. Or if I don't feel safe, I'm not going to worry about friendships and family. Um, and so basically, and we can apply this to the workplace, people feeling that they have a safety in their employment, right? People having connections at work, people feeling respected or having a title. All of these things can be applied to the workplace. And so, as I said, theory X is this physiological and safety, and theory Y is the top three. So, theory X basically says, and this is McGregor's assumptions about people, that people are by nature indolent, and that is they work as little as possible, which I completely disagree with, but that's my opinion. People lack ambition, dislike responsibility, and prefer to be led. People are inherently self-centered and indifferent to organizational needs. They're resistant to change, which is true. People maybe aren't very bright. Where theory Y says people aren't passive by nature or resistant to organizational needs, they only become so because of their experiences within that organization. And that motivation and the potential for development and the capacity for assuming responsibility and the readiness to direct behavior toward organizational goals are all present in people. Like, we want to do good, right? So people have this inherent want to do the right thing, to do good things, to do good work. And it's the responsibility of management to make it possible for people to recognize and develop themselves. And so in theory Y, the essential task of management is to arrange conditions and methods or to make a conducive work environment so that people can achieve their goals and they can put their efforts towards these organizational objectives. Right? So they're pretty contrasting viewpoints. Elderford's ERG theory just basically says that we have existence needs, relatedness needs, and growth needs. And it's really similar to Maslow's in that the existent needs are our physiological and our physical safety. Our relatedness is our interpersonal safety, love, and esteem, and then growth encompasses that self-actualization piece. Next, we're going to look at how the needs for achievement, power, and affiliation influence an individual's behavior in the workplace. All right. All right. So basically, Macmillan's need theory says that basically says that we have some needs, like need for achievement, which encompasses excellence. That's where competition comes from, having challenging goals, overcoming difficulties, and that people who have a higher need for achievement tend to perform better. The need for power it concerns the desire to influence others and change people or events and make differences. And this can be different types of power, whether in a social situation or a work situation or a personal situation. And then the need for affiliation is the urge to establish and maintain warm, close, and intimate relationships with others. And I think that you'll see all of these needs come into play within the workplace, right? We want to do well, right? Some people want power, some don't. We want to be part of a group, and all these can be used to motivate individuals within the workplace as well. We can have, I've heard of affinity groups where people who have similar hobbies or similar associations get into a group to establish connections. And that's just one way for a need of affiliation to fulfill that. All right, the two-factor theory of motivation just looks at the motivation factors and hygiene factors. So motivation factors that contribute to job satisfaction when they are present include achievement, recognition, the work itself, responsibility, advancement, growth, and salary. And so these are going to lead to job satisfaction among people when they are present. However, the hygiene factors contribute to dissatisfaction if they're absent. So if we don't have good policies, if we don't have good supervision, if we don't have good relationships or good working conditions or poor salary or poor status or poor security, then we're going to feel dissatisfied. So these are things that we need to have positive job satisfaction. If these are negative, we will have dissatisfaction. All right, there's two new ideas in human motivation, and these are pretty in touch with really progressive things in our world. And it's really kind of about the holistic person. So the eustress, strength, and hope, and it's euphoria and stress is eustress, is the positive perspective that encourages optimism, hope, and health for people at work. And you see this in the workplace with well-being programs. And so instead of focusing on needs or rewards or punishment, we're encouraging people to focus on these other areas, all right, and how they interpret and or how they respond to various events, all right. And then there's the positive energy and full engagement, and this is saying that an individual should manage their energy rather than time and should strategically disengage from certain activities so that they're fully engaged. And I think we see this. It's like, okay, that's not serving me well. I need to drop that off my plate, or this is not in my strengths. I'm going to let somebody else work on that. So it suggests that individuals do not need to be activated by unmet needs, but they're already activated by their own physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual energy. And managers should help individuals to learn how to manage their energy so they can build positive energy and capacity for work. And so to me, it's really about how do I use my gifts and talents to really do what I can do best. Next, we're going to look at the role of inequity, which you've all been in a situation in your job, where you're like, oh, that person gets paid more, but I do this. Or, oh, I think, maybe I work harder and they get the same rewards as I do. And so equity theory really just looks at the social processes that influence motivation and behavior, and looking at that interaction between the individual and their environment. And so here you can see that both the organization and the individual have demands and contributions. And so the contributions of the organization, such as status, benefits, income, help to with individuals' demands, and the contributions of individuals help with the organizational demands. And so it's just like a reciprocal relationship, you can kind of say. All right, so Adam's theory of inequity says that inequity is a situation when someone perceives that they're receiving less than they're giving, and vice versa. And really, what happens if somebody believes that inequity has happened is they'll decrease their inputs or outputs. They'll alter the comparison to others' outcomes and inputs. They'll change what's used for comparison. If they're the one who's being favored, they'll rationalize the inequity. If they're the one who's not being favored, or they perceive that they're being treated unequally, they'll leave the organization or the situation. And I think we hear it and we see this all the time. All right, and so there's different ways. There's situations in A where we have equity. Everybody feels that their outcomes, their inputs and their outcomes are equal, right? Negative equity is I feel like my inputs to outputs are less than those than my comparison, and positive is the inputs are greater than those of my comparison. All right, and so basically we look at the different types of equity or inequity, and so equity sensitivity is really when there's three different levels that people fall into. So equity sensitive is we want it to be fair. All right, we prefer an equity ratio equal to that of our comparison, or the person we're comparing ourselves to, or the situation. Benevolent are those who are comfortable with that the equity ratio is less and that they might be doing more. They're benevolent, and they're often referred to as givers. And then the entitled are comfortable with an equity ratio greater than that of his or her comparison. They're takers. They're okay that they're doing less. So next we're going to describe the expectancy theory of motivation. So expectancy theory really takes a look at am I getting the reward that I expect based on my performance? All right. And so there's balance, which is the value or importance I place on a particular reward. The expectancy, the belief that my efforts will lead to performance. And the instrumentality is the belief that the performance is related to rewards. All right, so you can see my effort. What are my chances of getting the job done if I put forth the necessary effort? What are my chances of getting rewards if I satisfactorily complete the job? And then what rewards do I value? All right, so basically, am I expecting, if I put forth the effort and I have the performance, am I getting the reward that I would expect? Right. Motivational problems and moral maturity. there are motivational issues everywhere. Some people don't